Thank you. So if I speak really quickly, we'll be able to hear me over the music, because when it starts, I may start dancing. But no, first of all, thank you all for having all of us here tonight. I gathered there have been several people here before me. And in particular, I was really looking forward to coming to speak to the JP Progressives. Coming from Brookline and being a member of an organization called Brookline PACS, which is the progressive arm of activism in Brookline. It's actually started in the late 60s and got the name PACS when we all were working against the war in Vietnam. We've grown over the years to be representatives of the conscience of Brookline, and I'm pleased to say that I have been endorsed in every election that I've run in, because today I am a town meeting member, yet again, in Brookline, and am a PACS endorsed candidate. And I think it's because I hark back to being called a liberal. You know, the treasurer's job is a very business and finance-oriented job, but it is not incongruous that you can be a treasurer and still reflect our progressive values. And I come to that very naturally. My family, my great-great-grandmother came halfway across the world, like so many other of our families, and she came to the north end of Boston with 11 kids and started a little store that was a little grocery store. Every single friend and relative arrived, had a job and a roof over their head. So it wasn't just about her family, it was about all the families. And that grew into what ultimately became Stop and Shop. But we were a business where it was not incongruous to have progressive values and have good business sense. We brought in the unions ourselves, and literally thousands upon thousands of people for 1, 2, 3 generations were able to have jobs that they could count on. And we had the opportunity to do things to make the world better, be political activists. Bill sitting right here knows that in the early 60s, when we all worked hard to get Mike Dukakis elected state rep, and I was in his coffee truck as a 7-year-old, and my own dad ran town-wide. So I used to say there's no separation between church and state, and what I meant by that was our progressive values drove who we were, and we were able to create a business and create a life for other people. I intend to take those values to the treasurer's office. I have the business background, I have the finance background, the local elected leadership background, and the nonprofit background to do the job. But the most important part is I have the right values to bring to the office and to be able to make that office work for people. Because at the end of the day, what all of us in this room are about is making sure that government works for people. Perfect example. It's elected in May of 1998. First meeting of the Brookline Board of Selectmen. There are 5 selectmen. I'm the newbie. I'm number 5. The Finance Committee comes in, and the issue before us is whether or not to adopt the cost of living adjustment for retirees. The Finance Committee recommended against it. The rest of the Board of Selectmen recommended against it. I have members of the Retirement Board standing behind me, 2 of them from the Brookline Fire Department, who had endorsed me. I had been endorsed by all of the public unions at the time, and a representative from Mass Retirees, an older gentleman. I listened to all of this, brand new, and I looked at the person from the Finance Committee and I said, "You are pissing in the wind." That ended up in the Brookline tab. First quote. True story. No one allowed me to speak at town meeting. It did not pass town meeting. People who were in their 80s, who had devoted their entire lives to service to the town of Brookline, were being denied a small amount of money that could make the difference to them between their heating bill and their food that they would eat in the winter months. It is inherently immoral and unethical. I got to work on this. Lois Pines was still the state senator from Newton, and Warren Tolman was still a state senator. And I worked with the retirees, I worked with the unions, and I negotiated a deal with the town. And what I said, we worked on this the entire summer. And at the end of the summer, we had a special town meeting. Bill, were you in town meeting at that time? It was right after Labor Day. I got up at town meeting. I was the only one to speak. We passed the COLA, and those people had a much better winter. That's number one. On social issues, I'd like to talk about the Patriot Act. There are a lot of people there was a lot of conversation, let's say, about the Patriot Act. And there were a lot of people at that time. It was at the very beginning of the war in Iraq. Even some progressives were wondering if maybe we were doing the right thing. This is going way back. But to me, the Patriot Act was a horrible violation of our civil rights and freedom of speech. And that is not typically a resolution against the Patriot Act, something that easily gets through town meeting. I wrote an impassioned speech that comes from deep within my soul. And we had almost a unanimous vote. I had one no. 265 town meeting members, one no. I think those are two very good examples of who I am as a progressive. One of the things that was very interesting, and I'll take it back to Brookline because this is where it really tested it. In our business at Stop and Shop, we existed on less than 1% profit margins. We actually did not sell out the company. We went through a hostile takeover, and that was not a corporate model that I could live with, and that's why I turned to the public sector. So I began to use my business and finance skills, turning around an adoption agency, working with different nonprofits, and helping them learn how to exist in very tough economic environments. So my business skills really came to play in the town of Brookline. Oddly, the anti-tax folks supported me, the Coalition Against Unfair Taxation, and PACs. So I had a very diverse base of people, and their attitude was that if she can run it well, she can do whatever she wants that are those socially liberal, crazy things that she's into. So I think a really good example was when I was chairman in the early part of 2000, 2001, 2002, and 2003, when we had an economic downturn. And I would walk into the budget sessions with the town administrator, it's not a town manager, and the other folks, and the first thing I would say is no layoffs. Now we can have a discussion about how we're going to manage the budget. We were able to do that, and yet as a progressive, I still opened our discussions at the spring town meeting with, we do nothing that harms the AAA bond rating. Why do I have that attitude? Because we want to do lots of good things and it costs lots of money. So if we manage ourselves well, then we have the funds to spend on what we need to in terms of capital projects and improving our schools and putting new sidewalks in and getting ourselves plowed out of snowstorms. So that's the balance between the sophisticated business background I had coming out of a more than $1 billion company, but a company that was a very basic business, because I find the food business and food people are just really good basic people, and taking those skills into the public sector and knowing how to do that. In the foundation work I do, I also work on investment policy, how we managed our way out of the 2008 and 2007-8 downturns, how we reversed that, and how we've paid very strict close attention on how we do that. So I bring both to the table, and I think that gives you a quick overview of my approach and my philosophy. This is one of the favorite parts of being able to be the Massachusetts State Treasurer and still being a progressive, because you have a lot of clout. You have an enormous amount of clout with the use of the proxy, and because you are an important customer. And so therefore, there are lots of social justice issues that are important to me, and one of them, several of them are who are on these boards of these companies. Why I want to invest in companies whose boards reflect our community, everyone in this room. More women, more minority, more people from diverse immigrant backgrounds. This is good business sense. This harks back to what I did in Brookline. When I would find that I was trying to, I'll give you an example, there were lots of civil service employees that were called, the word wasn't temporary, it's slipping me right now, provisional employees for 20 years. I decided to file a warrant article along with others behind me to make them permanent civil service status and sell that to town meeting as making very good business sense, because it is good business sense. When someone is providing a service to you, to call them provisional for 20 years doesn't give them ownership of their jobs. So that's the kind of approach to take with these large corporations, that it is important to have everyone at the table, to have your customers see that who you are, to have your employees see themselves on their boards. And to be candid, I don't want to be investing in a company that is a reflection of what, when I was taking Howard Zinn at BU, was called the power elite. I want them to look like the people sitting in this room. So that's a very important thing. I also believe in corporate citizenship. I know we did it at Stop and Shop, and we did it early before it became the sexy thing to do. And I know that that makes sense, because doing things for others and using profits to create a foundation. We had a charitable foundation at Stop and Shop when we were there. Doing those things is the right thing, because we don't have a healthy society unless everyone is partaking in it. And so it would be a wonderful opportunity to be able to push all of these companies to invest in Massachusetts, to provide opportunities for people, to do some of the things that I plan on doing. For example, I intend to start right away a kindergarten savings program, at first identifying the kids who have free lunch at no cost to the taxpayer, getting some of the bank fees from people like Fidelity and You Promise to invest in this fund. Do you know that kids are 7 times more likely to go to college if they have a college savings plan? It's being done. Even though we have a red sheet here in Nevada, I've already started working with that treasurer to find out the kind of legislation we have to do to make that happen. Those are the kind of things. So if anyone's been to my website or has read any of the things that I've been talking about lately, one of the very first things I began talking about is financial literacy. We only have a grant program in Massachusetts. It is under the treasurer's office. So I immediately started, again, outreaching to other treasurers and other programs, because I like to find out what best practices are. And Champlain has done a full study. If you Google it, you can find it. You will be dismayed to see that with our highly educated population, Massachusetts is graded F as in Frank. And there are other states that are doing a lot better that I don't want to mention where they are. So the point is that I intend to put a laser focus on making sure that we create financial literacy programs that come in at every level. Having been a local elected leader, I understand no unfunded mandates, and I have promised superintendents and school committees there will be no unfunded mandates from Deb Goldberg, because I get it. But we can, and particularly as the new governor comes in and is getting their feet wet, whoever that is, push for the DOE looking at ways of getting basic skills. For example, think about how many people wouldn't have gotten harmed in the subprime mortgage crisis if kids, as part of their regular math curriculum, learned what a mortgage is, what the down payment does, when a value drops, what happens. Very basic math lesson taught in less than 1 week, and I don't believe in standardized tests, and I don't support the MCAS as the sole standard of graduation. But as long as that exists and they're so hung up on those things, put it in as a question into the MCAS. And it's not an unfunded mandate. It's part of the basic math curriculum. Working with unions. I've been talking to 2222, who I'm very pleased has decided to endorse me. But one of their things is they have been trying to provide financial literacy programs for their people, because so many of them took out second mortgages to pay for their kids' college and are in serious trouble. So we want to work with the unions. We want to work at the community college level. We want to get something into the basic curriculum. And I've begun putting together the folks to work on that collaboration. When I intend to be treasurer for hopefully a very long time. When I retire someday in my wheelchair and gray hair, I hope it's that long. If I can walk away and say that we have every citizen of Massachusetts who needs it educated in financial literacy then I will feel like I've really made a huge impact and feel very good about that. Well, it's very easy for someone who is not, I'm going to give my two other opponents a break. They both are in the legislature and they both had to vote for something. So it's really easy for me to say I supported the governor and I don't support the outcome. But I also, again, speak with my values. In Brookline, we have something called the residential tax exemption. It is a public policy position where we exempt the first $100,000 of taxes for homeowners. What that technically does is it actually throws a higher tax to people above the median, and those of us who are above the median are happy to do it because it supports those at the bottom. It's a way we've been able to have a little bit of progressive taxation. I don't feel our tax system works. It isn't fair. It doesn't work the way we need it. 2.5% harms everybody. But the things that I would like to see happen, we need to change laws to get that done. And I'm hoping that at some point we will have, at the same time, a governor, Senate president, and a Speaker of the House who all agree with that. I believe it didn't happen last year for two reasons. I think that there are legislators who are fearful of getting reelected. And there are people throughout the state who are more conservative than many of us. And I think sometimes they don't understand that doing the right thing can often bring others along who didn't necessarily believe that that was the way to go. I think our new health care is one of those examples. Someday, our new health care plan will be viewed in the same way that Social Security is. And Social Security, all the conservatives in the middle of the country want their Social Security. But sometimes you have to push the needle and then others will come along. And I don't think we're there yet in Massachusetts, and that's why it hasn't happened.
Okay, great. Just to follow up on that real quickly, and then I will call on people, I promise. What do you think you can do as treasurer to help get us there?
I think that in the, sorry, did somebody? Okay. The treasurer can use the bully pulpit. A treasurer can walk into any hearing and speak to the issue, even if it isn't involved in the treasurer's office. But they also can help think of ways to create new revenue streams. And in creating new revenue streams, hopefully also help to designate them to certain programs. I actually was discussing that with Michael Dukakis because he had some ideas about ways in which to do that he's hoping to work with the governor candidates on. But it's really a situation of a bully pulpit and being able to speak with passion and articulately in hearings reflecting our progressive values. I am, in fact, very close to Mindy Lubar, who is head of Ceres, which is the organization that looks at ways in which you can invest in green initiatives and divest out of poor initiatives like fossil fuels. I will tell you that there are a couple of things that I would tell you I'm against fossil fuels. Let's start with that. I helped start climate change action in Brookline, converting cars to Priuses in Brookline. What I'm challenged on is the way in which we go about it. And even Ben Downing, whose bill this is working with the treasurer's office on what's the best approach, because very progressive groups like 1199 are concerned of moving too quickly and harming the pension funds of workers. So I believe that what we're doing a great job putting pressure on the companies, and this is what I'm told is a strategy, is to make them get these very poor things like fossil fuels off their books and move into investing in greener and cleaner technologies. I'm told by people involved in it, like Mindy Lubar, that it is working and that we've got to keep the pressure on Brookline. I intend to vote in Brookline Town Meeting in May to divest from fossil fuels. So I am part of the movement to push the companies, but I want to be very careful on how we move out of those stocks and out of those investments. I don't want to hurt the folks whose pensions we're talking about.
It's only 20% a
It's tougher on them than you realize. A lot of the union folks have come to me recently and said, we are concerned, we want to move slowly, and so I'm not talking out of both sides of my mouth. I don't know enough of the technicality and how to exactly do it. What Ben Downing will ultimately come up with, and I believe they are working together with the Treasurer's Office on the best approach, I will be wanting to see what they are going to be doing. And I'm working with Mindy Lubar, who's one of the people pushing the divestment, who's a supporter of mine. I just don't have all the facts yet. And I do my homework. It's really easy just to stand up and say, I'm for this or I'm for that. But if you don't have a complete picture, I don't move till I have the complete picture. Well, that's kind of interesting because I was the licensing authority in Brookline. The Board of Selectmen is the authority on liquor licenses in Brookline. So I'm surprised that Boston hasn't had that authority yet. So it gave me a great deal of leverage over all the liquor stores and also all the restaurants. Yeah. And in fact, we were able, candidly, we did a lot of stings on busting people for selling alcohol underage and closed people down and took away their licenses when they had violated too often. So I am for very diligent regulation of alcohol. Isn't it funny when alcohol, which is so dangerous to people, is legal, and yet I happen to be for legalizing medicinal marijuana, and that wasn't. I mean, it's an incongruity. So I don't know specifically the council's regulation and what they've requested.
Everyone on City Council voted for it except for City Council President Bill Linehan. I just wanted to put that out there.
What about Michelle Wu? Sorry. I didn't say that.
No, it's okay.
Oh, that's televised.
Other questions?
Sorry, Michelle. That's part of financial literacy. Because and it's also part of the Commonwealth Covenant Fund, which I sit on, which has not been funded enough by the legislature. I actually made a promise to the other members of the Commonwealth Covenant Fund. The Commonwealth Covenant Fund is tuition reimbursement for those who have majored in the STEM areas. And it would be nice if we could include arts in that, so it was STEAM instead of STEM. And giving them tuition reimbursement if they stay in Massachusetts and work in one of those fields. The legislature raided the fund, left it with very little money, and it's been spent down. I would like to see a dedicated stream of investment in this because that will help with the student loans. But more importantly, I support Elizabeth Warren's work and the bill she is filing in Washington because she has a plan to embarrass every one of those, the conservative Democrats and Republicans before the next election by going after the whole student loan system and reducing that debt on students, and it affects everyone, not just Democrats, and she thinks she may have something going here. So that in itself will do more than we can do around the edges, but I will do whatever I can within the Treasurer's Office between financial literacy, educating families, educating kids, and getting more funding for the Commonwealth Covenant Fund. Sounds like a great idea.
There you go.
You asked me if I would support it. Sounds like a great idea.
Okay, if anyone else has a question that short, there's still time for one more. All right, in that case, I think we're done. Deb, thank you so much.
Thank you.